Where did you learn that the interaction with the environment requires a nervous system? Can you cite a single source that backs that claim up? That you must have a nervous system in order to
interact with the environment? I'm saying I don't think you're a good fake actor. I don't think I could.
You can call my character all you want.
Account.
I see.
I'm saying the thing that he's identifying, it can't be life at conception, because life necessarily needs a proximal nervous system for it to be a viable life form.
So he's
like nothing will exist for any period of time unless it has a nervous system.
Hang on.
Whoa. I'm just going to finish the sentence.
Let him finish.
Thank
we'll
you.
get to you, I promise. You'll get.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay, if you're gonna make a claim like that, and allow me to cite my source, and while I do, you need to cite your source for that life requires a nervous system. But while you find that source, I'm gonna read from the American College of Pediatricians, a scientific journal that states in an abstract study that the predominance of human biological research confirms that human life begins at conception or fertilization. At fertilization, the human being emerges as a whole, genetically distinct, individuated, zygotic living human organism, a member of the genus species Homo sapiens, needing only the proper environment in order to grow and develop. The difference between the individual in its adult stage and in its zygotic stage is one of form, not of nature. And then it concludes in the end that the American College of Pediatricians concurs with the body of scientific evidence that corroborates that unique human life starts when the sperm and the egg bind together in a process of fusion of the respective membranes, and a single hybrid cell called a zygote or one cell embryo is created. So if you can
that's so silly, Zen. Look, because I can tell you, you can call the source.
You gotta let him respond, Zen. You gotta let him respond.
You're talking forever, man. Hey, I get it. I get your point of view.
Let him.
If you're trying to communicate it, I understand that.
For him to respond.
Your argument's been said before. It's not like something new. I know where you're coming from.
If you reject the source, provide a better one. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Let him.
Your sources. If you can Google this. It's not very hard.
Go ahead and Google it.
If you want to talk about, biologists, so that life necessarily needs to be able to, reproduce, have some sort of respiration. There's a list. There's lists. The list could be growing bigger and bigger. And
nervous system is not one of those criteria. Criteria are as follows: being made of cells containing DNA.
No, in order to be a viable life form.
Okay, so if you're going to keep interrupting me, I don't want to hear shit about you coming at me or me interrupting you. It's clearly a one-sided game here. All right, so the criteria for life are as follows. You can Google this and verify it. They're being made of cells containing a DNA, maintaining homeostasis, having a metabolic process, growing, reproducing either sexually or asexually, and adapting and responding to stimuli. None of those require a nervous system. And if you can find a source that disagrees, then cite it.
Zen, like I had said in my opening sequence, what you're doing is you're trying to deny a woman's sovereignty. So ultimately, whatever perception you have on this, it's not sufficient enough to deny a woman's sovereignty about her control of her own body.
And it's not sufficient enough
You're
to make a claim
identifying cells as conferring the ability to overwhelm, a woman's ability to choose what's right for herself.
It's not.
So I don't know how you're getting from I identify.
One at a time. Let mythology finish his point. Zen, you got to relax just a little bit, man. You got plenty of time. Promise, sure. You got plenty.
And you know this. Just because you identify something doesn't mean you get to act a certain way towards it. You know that. So what you're saying is you're willing to, identify something. You point to something. Other scientists have pointed to other things, and you're willing to overwhelm a woman's sovereignty of her own body because of it. I'm saying that's bullshit. It doesn't make sense.
Okay.
I don't know how you're going to get from point A to point B. What mechanism of reason can you get from point A to point, like taking over someone's life? I don't get it.
Bro, can you please cite your source?
It's reasoning. It's reasoning. Other people use reasoning.
You say that there's a bunch of scientific sources that disagree with what I'm saying, then cite a single one. I can cite you 5 more right now that support exactly what I just said from 5 different scientific journals.
I saw your other.
Cite just one that is reputable. Maybe I'll humor you, but you haven't. Find one single source. That's all you have to do.
Well,
one single source.
If you're taking this from the position of when life begins, and you've cited your scientific data for that, and you can put that in the private chat too, so he has access to it if you want to. I think that's a fair argument, but it sounds like one of the cruxes of his argument is about women's sovereignty, and I wonder if you want to answer to that.
Well, we first must establish, because the crux of my argument implies that if he's going to argue for a bodily autonomy perspective, that we need to be considering the bodily autonomy of the human that is inside of the womb and that is confirmed to be a human being at the moment of conception. But if he denies that premise, the scientific premise, we can't continue with the conversation. I'm not going to humor him when he rejects premise 1 and then we move on to premise 2 when his argument is now built on a false foundation. So it's a bad faith discussion. He needs to agree to the science. This is a scientific fact that human life begins at conception. And again, I can cite 5 more sources. I just dropped it in the chat. I can drop 5 more that support the exact
I know
same.
why you need to have it at conception. I understand that.
Because that's what the fact of the matter is. It's not that
I think most reasonably in law, there's concepts of personal identity.
Established science, dude. Like, you're literally denying science.
I am not denying science at all.
Yes, you are. Okay, then the science states that human life begins at conception. If you deny that, you deny science.
But can't he make a contrary logical argument regardless of the scientific statements that
yeah, but why should I believe him if he's got no sources to back it up? He's just saying, oh, it requires a nervous system. Okay, cite your source for that claim. You can't just make a claim and then not back it up.
It's a basic biological. If I said someone, you wouldn't believe it. You're just going to push it down the road.
No,
I'm not.
Dude,
I am not obligated to. I'm not obligated to cite something that's very obvious and stated many times.
Okay, if it's so obvious,
I'm not obligated to provide to give you an education on this matter because it's overwhelmingly the fact that something cannot. A nervous system. You need. Okay, listen to the reasoning here. Okay, when any organism goes out into the world, they need to interact with it to be viable. They need to be able to respond to stimulus.
Yep.
They need to, we can say that it needs to have reproductive capacities.
I agree.
It needs to be able to breathe. All that needs a nervous system. Does that make sense to you? This is the powers of reasoning. Does that make sense to you?
No, that's not correct.
You are dismissing. I'm saying you're not thinking rationally. You're appealing to authority. I've seen your sources. They're social sciences.
Dude, I don't know how you expect to continue in this conversation if you're literally don't interrupt me. You're gonna deny the source that I'm providing and then not provide a counter source, but then say you are correct. Why should anybody believe you? You're literally just talking out of your ass. Cite a single source. That's all you have to do. It's one single source.
You're almost in crazy insistence on citing a source.
Yeah, because you're making a claim that you haven't backed up with
I don't need to do that.
Sources.
It's a rational statement to think that anything that travels in this world needs to be able to interact with it. Anything. No, listen to me. I'm saying because I don't believe you. I don't think you're a good faith actor here. So I don't think anything that I could give you, which I don't feel like I'm obligated to give you an education or take you to, be an academic for you.
You're unable to.
I don't need to be a resource. I don't need to be that for you. I don't want to be that for you.
Okay.
I refuse.
How about this?
I'm telling you that if you can't understand that anything that lives in this world.
Like I know you want us to go one at a time, VPF, but the dude just keeps talking.
Yeah, it's okay, man. We're kind of getting to the heart of this now, actually. Yeah. So first of all, over to you, Zen. You can make the argument, of course, that I have a lot of scientific literature on where life begins, and if you can't provide any contrary sources, ipso facto, I win. However, there is an argument there to be made, I think, still even on women's sovereignty, even if the scientific sources agree with you. And there's also an argument that could be made on the lawful sources, because the law doesn't recognize that life begins when does the law say it begins?
Well, it doesn't matter what the law states, because in order to make his argument, it hinges on the denial of science. I'm telling you right now, if he's going to make an argument for women's sovereignty over the fetus, I'm sure he just calls it a clump of cells or whatever. Mm-hmm. If he's going to make an argument for that, and the women's sovereignty is more important, it hinges on the idea, not fact, the idea that this is not a human being inside of the womb. I am not going to concede and just say, okay, let's move on in the conversation. If you're going to outright deny science, provide a counter, but not back it up. No, but why should
Zen, I am deeply concerned about your understanding of what science actually does.
Yeah,
mostly what science does is try. Listen to me. I need to explain this to you, because I think there's a thing that you're not understanding, and this is one of the reasons that I think your whole argument is going to fall apart on this. But what science does is it tries to put observations together and create a model where it can kind of predict reality. It uses its own terms to create this model. An accurate scientific model will go onto the world and say, and like, I think this is going to happen. It thinks about solutions and problems and tries to solve them within its field of interest. I know you don't care that there's different scientific fields, other than I think probably embryology and you said whatever you just said. But science is a very large, group of knowledge, and none of that which the observations taken are designed to predict reality, not determine the moral worth of something that it observes.
But can
what
you
you're doing is almost absurd, and your denial of what it actually does is you not understanding science.
How about you provide one single scientific method that is reputable and recognized, peer-reviewed journal, something like that illustrates your argument that a life requires a nervous system. Like again, I hate to keep harping on this.
No, you're not.
I didn't expect so much science.
Let's make this abundantly clear. What Zen's saying here is he's saying, here's my concise evidence for when I think life begins exactly, and we need to use it as a starting point before I can move on to the conversation. So you either need to refute when he claims life begins by making a logical argument, or by making a scientific.
I'm making a logical argument with actual kind of reasoning, simple reasoning. It's not difficult to understand that anything that is viable life form has to be able to interact with an environment.
Yep.
And so that necessarily requires a nervous system.
And where did you learn that?
I don't know why you can't understand that.
Okay, that's where I'm stopping you. Where did you learn that the interaction with the environment requires a nervous system? Can you cite a single source that backs that claim up? That you must have a nervous system in order to
want to set your crux on, I'm saying I don't think you're a good fake actor. I don't think I could.
You can call me a character all you want, but you have yet to back up a single point you've made.
Hang on, let's respond to you here, man.
You can call me a bad faith actor all you want. I mean, you're really just throwing an ad hominem because you can't actually defend your position. You're actually better off here. How about this? I'll grant you some charity. I will tell you, if you just accept that human life begins at conception, that's not an automatic defeater to the pro-life position or pro-choice position. You can still argue. I know people, I have debated many people that accept that human life begins at conception, and then they still continue to defend pro-choice. I'm not saying they're automatically wrong for accepting that life begins at conception. You can do that and then still go with your women's sovereignty argument. And then we can
Zen, you are absolutely wrong. You have a bad notion of how to identify a person.